Welcome to the Impact Business Show. I'm your host, Annalise Warren, a marketing agency CEO, business strategist, digital marketing mentor, wife, and mama of 4 little ones. Stay tuned for conversations with successful, purpose-driven business leaders, as well as practical marketing strategies that you can action right away. We are here to help you master your marketing, build your business, and change the world. So let's get into it. Hello, everyone. Now, on today's episode, I interviewed the lovely Ryann Dowdy. Ryann is a sales expert, and she helps 7- and 8-figure CEOs generate daily sales on demand without more of their time by building and training high-performing sales teams. Ryann is passionate about helping successful business owners take back control of the revenue in their business, their time, and their freedom by building a profitable sales team. With her business partner, Callie Roach, who was also my business coach, who I worked with for a year, they are on a mission to free CEOs from the role of salesperson in their business. Before starting her own business, Ryann spent 15 years in the corporate world building multi-million-dollar sales organizations for startups in the digital marketing and advertising space. From sales reps to individual contributor to director of sales, Ryann has mentored, managed, and trained thousands of sales reps. Ryann's first crack at entrepreneurship was Uncensored Consulting, where she helped hundreds of women get their first clients, leave their day jobs, and take back control of their lives by teaching tried and true sales strategies that aren't dependent on social media or trendy tactics. Ryann focuses on the art of building relationships and human-to-human connection, and we really do get into that into the episode. And now she's building her second business, and she's on a mission to change the lives of CEOs by giving them back their time, financial peace, and the ability to multiply their revenue through a high-performing, empowered sales team. Now, I have seen firsthand the quality of the information that Ryann teaches. We utilize a lot of that in our own business because she's also one of the coaches, trainers inside the program that I did with Callie Roach. And so I have tried these techniques. I know that Ryann knows what she's talking about. And so I really encourage you to lean into this. This conversation about sales is really about how you can do this well and how you can do this in a systematic way, because lots of us just kind of don't know what we're doing. We have conversations, we don't follow up, it's not strategic, we don't think from how many clients do I want and work our way backwards and put numbers around it, because we start off as a one-man band and we're just doing all the things. And so we talk about putting some structure around that and how you can define the tasks that actually need to happen in terms of sales. And if you come like me from not that background, this is really life-changing information, and you can use this in any business, in any capacity, because this is fundamental sales process and numbers. So I hope that you enjoy this conversation. I hope that you get a lot from it, and I can't wait to hear your feedback. With that, I will leave you to our conversation. Enjoy. Hi, Ryann. Welcome to the show.
Hi, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you.
I'm so happy. I was just mentioning off camera how excited I was when this popped up into my inbox. So could you tell everybody, they've heard your official bio. Could you just give everyone the unofficial version, let them know a little bit about you and why I was so excited, what your expertise is?
Yeah. So, well, thank you again, Annalise, for the opportunity. And I'm excited to be here. So yeah, my story is, I spent my entire career in sales. I actually sold marketing. Like, that's what I sold. I sold marketing and advertising for 15 years. And so I always say that, like, I know the fundamentals of marketing really well. I just can't implement. So like, I can tell people how to market. I just don't know how to do it. So that's like your superpower. It's not mine. Because that's what I was selling. I was selling everything from radio advertising to digital solutions and back again. And what happened is I was actually the director of sales of a digital advertising agency. Life was great. And I went back to work after my son was born and was just like, I don't really love this anymore. And I actually did not realize that I would be an entrepreneur. I actually thought that I would wind up just changing industries or something. But then when I started networking and talking to people, I kept finding super brilliant, talented humans whose businesses were struggling because the sales piece was missing in their business, right? So how to sell, how to connect with new people, how to build relationships is really challenging. So my first business was specifically that. I worked with helping women leave their 9-to-5 and build businesses. That was kind of my first venture into entrepreneurship, and had the awesome opportunity to work with Kelly Roach was my business coach at the time. And I was actually training her sales team as a contractor. And then when the market started shifting and businesses started growing and people started realizing they needed teams, everyone was like, okay, well, I know that I want to have a sales team, but like, how do I train them? What do I do with them once I have them, right? So we actually launched a company called Social Sellers Academy, where we work specifically with 7- and 8-figure CEOs on training their teams. So that's what I do day to day. I am married. I have 3 kiddos. I have a 16-year-old stepdaughter, a 4-year-old, a 2-year-old, and we live in Kansas City in Missouri in the States. And it's just been a wild and crazy handful of years in my life.
As a fellow mama of young ones, I feel, yeah. Awesome. That's so exciting. And that is really why I did want you. Yeah, I was really excited to speak with you, because I find the same thing, is that the sales piece, people to go into business wanting to just do their thing and think they'll press go on their website and like the floods will will come and everyone will know like exactly what they do and want to work with them. So talk to me about sales and what makes a great salesperson.
Yeah. So let's talk about sales. I think it's the whole reframe of sales, right? Like, we think that sales is this like gross, yucky, pushy thing. It is something we do to someone, right? It's taking somebody's money in exchange for, and so the first thing I teach all of our clients, whether they're CEOs or salespeople or the business owners I used to work with, is like, we have to reframe what sales is, right? Sales is the exchange or a product or service for money, like period, in the story, right? So that's the first thing we do. But then to answer your second question is what makes a good salesperson? It's not the obvious things that people are like, oh, well, they have to be an extrovert and they have to be all these different things. Like, what I look for in salespeople, at least I look for people who match the mission, vision, and values of my company, right? Like, do they have the same values? Do we see eye to eye? Like that sort of stuff. Because they can't sell my stuff if they don't, right? If they aren't bought in on the mission and my values as a human, they're never going to be able to sell me in my company, right? And then I'm looking for people who actually like people. People say that salespeople should be money motivated, right? And yeah, money's great, but you have to actually like people too. I think that's really important. And then I look for people that are just driven and motivated and love to solve problems and love to connect with humans. I always say that sales is about human to human connection. So I'm looking for people that are really good at human to human connection.
Yeah. I mean, you got to do a lot of talking to people. If you don't like people,
right.
It's going to be a big problem. And the selling that you teach isn't just standard sales. A lot of the work that I have heard of yours is around social selling and around doing this in a capacity that's not with ads necessarily. So if you could chat a little bit about that would be great.
Yeah. So yeah, social selling is what we do. So the name of our business is Social Sellers Academy. And I just say that social selling, it's like in the corporate world, right? There was inside sales, which was selling via the phone. There was outside sales, which means like we went out into the world and shook hands and met people. That was my career. And then now there is social sales, which is we leverage social media as our primary sales tool. So a lot of the conversations that we're having, the relationships that we're building, they're happening on social media. They're being created in the DMs. They're being created via Zoom. That's really kind of the basis of what we do. But yeah, I'm really big on organic lead generation and organic relationship building. And here's why. When we generate leads organically, meaning not using advertising. And I'm not opposed to ads. Like, to me, it's a both and, Annalise. It is not an either or. There's a lot of people that are like, you have to do it this way or you have to do it that way. I'm like, I think you should do it both ways because they both work. But the reason I love organic and the reason a lot of people start with organic is because then we get to hand select our clients, right? When we serve ads, we're at the mercy of who Facebook shows our ads to, right? And we just hope and pray that they're the right people and that they jive with us. But like when we're prospecting and we're networking, like we get to pick, we get to say like, ooh, Annalise, like I love her vibe. I love what she teaches. Or, ooh, Sarah, she's fantastic. She's super fun. Or, ooh, that person, I just don't think we mesh, right? So organic really allows us to go out and hand select who we want to network with and ultimately who we want to build business with, right? Or who we want to do business with. So I'm a big fan of just viewing social media as one great big giant networking event, right? We just get to go out, we get to meet people, we get to learn about other people, we get to solve problems. And it's super cliche. I know that it's true, but it's this whole like your network is your net worth, right? It's about who you know. It's about, collaboration. It's about relationship building. And that's what I love about social media so much, is because we share so much of ourselves on social media that we wind up being very connected to people very quickly, because we're like, oh, I can look on social and I can learn all these things about you and I can already see what we have in common and I can already see how we jive. And so it allows us to build relationships so much faster.
And what would you say to the person who is uncomfortable approaching people first, and particularly on Facebook, using their personal profile potentially? Like, what do you tell people who are really hesitant around moving that across from, aunties and uncles and friends overseas to this is a business tool now?
Yeah, so I view Facebook as I did like LinkedIn 5 years ago, right? Like LinkedIn was all business, and so now that's how I leverage Facebook. And that to me was a decision I made when I decided to start an online business, right? Like, why would I not use this free tool that I have to connect with people? And I know that that's hard, but you're like, but what about my personal stuff? Like, that's perfectly fine. I never propose, Annalise, that we turn into business robots and that the only content that we share or the only thing that we talk about are our businesses, right? Because so many people choose to do business with us because of who we are as humans, right? Like, I wind up working with a lot of moms of littles because I have littles, right? Like, that's our connection. It's like, oh, your kids, how old are your kids? Like, I have people who I've never met before that I will get into a conversation with or be on the phone with. And they're like, oh yeah, our kids are the same age. And I'm like, how do you know who my kids are? Right? Or they're like, yeah, somebody literally told me that the other day, Georgia is too. So I was like, yeah, I think our kids are like a month apart. Like, how do you know who my kid was?
It's just a little bit creepy.
So, but to me, so I think it's not an either or situation. It's not, we can only use our Facebook profiles for business or we can only use them for personal. For me, it's both. But where most of that fear comes from, Annalise, is the fear of judgment, right? Like, what are these people going to think? And I have been pleasantly surprised of what like the people in my life say. And I'll give you a specific example. I was out front of my house chasing my children the other day, and my neighbor came over and she was chit-chatting, and I had forgot that she'd recently friend requested me. And she told me, she's like, I'm just so fascinated by what you do for a living. And I was like, at first, you get nervous because you're like, oh gosh, she's going to ask me what I do and it's going to be weird. And she's like, I've been in real estate for 15 years. And like the world that you live in, she was like, your last post, all these people telling about like what they do and how they help people. She's like, I had no idea that existed. Like, she was just so excited about it. So like, we're worried about, often the negative judgment we think we're going to get is not at all. Like, I get messages from people all the time. A girl I went to high school with who I was not friends with in high school, who was like, I just love, how confidently you show up in your business and what a great example you're setting for your kids. Like, most people, I like to believe that most people are inherently good. And the people that are going to judge you, they're going to judge you anyway. So whether it is, your cocktail party on Friday night or your business, they're already judging you. So that's kind of what I tell you is, I think the fear comes from judgment. And my thought is the people who are going to negatively judge you are going to negatively judge you anyway. So you might as well do something productive and leverage a free tool that gives you access to billions of people, literally.
Well said. Thank you so much. That's why I asked the question. But side note, can I just say for those of us who are like, not drowning, but like, like immersed in the sea of entrepreneurship, how hilarious that there's people that like, we just think that everyone's like us, that everyone knows about what's going on here.
Yeah.
And
And
how,
this is a smart, successful woman. Like, it's
Yeah.
funny. I also this morning was interviewed a gal who's getting they teach sales in college now. I'm like, what? That's crazy town. How exciting. Because when I was in college, that was not a thing. But she's taking a sales program. So she reached out to me, somebody connected us, and we're chatting, and I was like trying to explain to her what we did. And I was like, this is so hard, because in her mind, she's going to graduate college and she's going to go work in a corporation. Like, that's what she's going to do. She's going to work for a big company. You know, she would tell me that like Dell came to like their last career fair. And I'm like, huh. So like trying to explain what we do as online entrepreneurs, pretty wild.
you gotta think differently, just, scramble a little bit. Okay. So let's talk about building a team, because that's a lot about what I do. Is I help people build their team out so that they're not doing all of the work. And in order to be able to do that from a service-based perspective, they're going to have to move into sales. So they're going to have to build that part. So would you have any advice around that in terms of the structure? If you are going from a solo entrepreneur who's awesome at what they do, working one-on-one with clients, and then they hire someone who's great at what they do as well, and they pass off some of that work, like, when do they start building out that sales team?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so, there are some businesses that like their first hire is typically a VA and then sales, right? Because you guys are service providers, you're not necessarily coaches or consultants. Typically, yeah, you need more doers before you can hire sales. To me, it's as soon as that first or second employee has created enough space for you to be profitable, right? Like, my goal is always to make sure that everyone is profitable before we hire the next someone. So first person needs to be profitable, and then second person probably needs to be profitable from a doer's perspective. And then it's time for you to decide, do you want to be the primary salesperson in your business, right? Like, what happens if you are, meaning, I'm sure because you're amazing at what you do, you get a lot of referrals and different stuff like that, but you don't want to be dependent on referrals. You don't want to be dependent on ads. You don't want to be, so for me, it's, as soon as those first two people are profitable, it's time to start thinking about that sales hire, because otherwise the business is always contingent upon you, right? Like, if you decide to go on vacation, no business gets closed, right? If unfortunately you get sick, no business gets closed, right? Like, if you're the only person in the business who can run sales calls and now you have a team of people to feed, like, that's a scary place to be. So for me, it's as soon as you can, like, you start to feel yourself being the bottleneck, meaning, like, I will give you a perfect example. I remember there was a time in my business where somebody wanted to have a sales conversation with me, Annalise, and this is before I hired a team and before Social Sellers Academy. And I was looking at my calendar and I was like, yeah, no, I have no idea where I'm going to take this call. And I move stuff because that's what you do, right? Like, I prioritize the revenue. But it was to the point where I was like, I'm having to move my schedule around to grow my business. Like, this is insane. And I can't continue at this level. So for me, it was really about, once I realized that, when somebody wanted to buy my stuff, I had to push them out a week to have a conversation. Like, that was a problem. Or, like I said, the business, when I went on vacation or go away or take time off, that the business doesn't grow without me. So for me, it's when you're in that space. And again, for the done for you service provider, it isn't always, as soon as it would be if you were, a coach or a consultant. I would agree with that.
Okay. Awesome. Thanks for that, that perspective. I think that's really helpful. And then what mistakes do most companies kind of make when they are hiring salespeople? How do we start that process?
Yeah. So let's start at the very beginning. Is a lot of people try to outsource sales almost too quickly. It's actually one or the other. Like, I either find people that are like, get it off my plate immediately. I'm like, are you making any money? They're like, no. I'm like, cool, you should go do that first. And these other people that are like, we're making millions of dollars and I'm terrified to let go of sales. I want to pull you back to, like, once we have a really good idea of who our ideal client is and we have a proven offer. And again, as done for you service providers, this probably looks a little bit different, but like, when you can start promising results, right? When you can say, hey, as a Facebook ads manager, I can accomplish X for my clients, or as a VA, I can accomplish Y for my clients. So you want to niche down a little bit before you hire a salesperson, because you want that salesperson to be able to go out and find your ideal client and build a relationship with them, and then be able to promise a result that you've delivered before. So that's kind of step one. And a lot of people, like I said, they're just in a rush to do it. They hate sales. They're overworked. They're still touching all the projects. They're doing all the things. Maybe you buy the story of like, I'm an introvert, I'm not good at sales. And so you're like, just get it off my plate as quickly as possible. But what winds up happening in that respect is you wind up churning and burning through salespeople because they're not set up for success, because they don't have all the information that they need to be successful. Right.
Yeah. Guilty. Actually guilty.
Right.
that was me like 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Yep.
we did it in Social Sellers Academy. When we launched the brand back in January, we hired a sales team. We're like, yeah, absolutely. Let's go. No. And thank God that it was business number 2 for both of us, because otherwise it would have been a problem financially. If we needed to live, like if we needed our business to feed us, we would have been in big trouble, because we didn't have a proven offer and we didn't know our ideal client well enough. And it took us way longer to be profitable, for our sales team to be profitable, than it would have had we waited until those things were done.
Yeah.
So I've made the mistake myself. So this is me teaching from experience, not sitting up here in my glass house throwing stones. Like,
yeah,
I've been there.
Yeah. Because how do you train them if you don't know what you're doing? Like I would get questions and I was like, I don't know, I've never done it. Figure it out. And I'm like, okay, that's not okay. Pull back, and at least I had to put them somewhere else. I'm like, all right, I'm going to take over and learn how to do this, and then I'll teach you how to do it.
Right. So that's kind of, mistake number 1. Mistake number 2 is getting really hung up on experience because of what you just described, right? You're like, I don't want to do this. I don't have time for it. I'm running the business. I would rather do the creative work, the reason I started a business. And so we wind up thinking, well, if I just hire someone who's got a lot of experience, it'll be easier. And the data shows that that's not necessarily true. Honestly, it's like a couple of difference between somebody with no experience and experience till they're fully on ramped. They say that a salesperson is at 100% capacity, an experienced salesperson somewhere between 6 and 9 months, and an inexperienced salesperson between 9 and 12 months. So you're talking maybe 3 to 6 months, and an experienced salesperson is going to cost you a lot more. And I'm not saying don't hire experienced people. I just feel like people get they're paralyzed because they can't find an experienced person. And so they think that they can't hire because the person isn't experienced. I'm like a hire for attitude, train for skill, right? Like find the person who is likes your mission and vision and values. Find the person who you get along with, find the person that you enjoy being around, that you trust, that you feel like can represent your brand well in the marketplace, and then teach them how to sell. Right? Like you can teach, and again, yes, of course, obviously I run a sales training organization, but if that's not your jam, go read books. There are so many good resources out there. So I would rather find the right fit, the right culture fit, the right company fit, than worry about experience. And like I said, I find a lot of people who they're like, I've been trying to hire forever, but I just can't find that unicorn that knows everything about da 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 da. And I'm like, yeah, no, you're never going to find that. Or if you are, it's going to cost you a fortune. So you're better suited to just find your person that you jive with and then train them. And then the final thing is well, there's a lot, but the one that I will give you next is not having key performance indicators or KPIs or metrics set up for your salesperson. And in the beginning, they are made up. That's okay. But you have to tell them what to do all day. Right? You wouldn't hire, so say you have a marketing agency, right? And you hire a copywriter, you wouldn't just tell the copywriter, yeah, just go write that sales page, right? You would give them some context and you would tell them how to do it. And you would tell them what your SLAs are and your turn time and your communication and your edits and all the other stuff. You would tell them those things. You have to do the same thing with your salesperson. Right? I want you talking to X number of new people every day. I want you running Y number of sales calls every day. I want you, running this many networking calls. I want you adding this many new people to your pipeline. We have to give them a place to start so we can measure success, right? Because in the beginning, the success isn't going to come in dollars and cents. It's going to become in the ability to check those boxes. And so a lot of people, they're like, I hired a salesperson and it's just it's not working out. I'm like, tell me more about that. Where's the breakdown? I'm like, I don't know. They're not selling anything. And I'm like, okay, well, what's their activity look like? And they're like, I don't know. And we can't fix the problem if we don't know what they're doing. We can't say, oh, you're not talking to enough people, or, oh, you just need help running better, discovery calls. I don't know. Right. But if I don't have any data, I can't make them any better. So I see that mistake happen a lot too, is we're like, all right, cool, I've hired this person, but there's not really a clear path to follow. And usually that comes from, well, I don't know the path. And I'm like, make it up, right? Like, again, when you started your marketing agency, you didn't know how to put together SOPs and do all those other things, but what did you do? You made it up, and then you polished. Every time you signed a new client, that's actually, we need to add this. Oh, here's a hole here. Or actually that step is, too much, or, that sort of stuff. So I think it's really about setting those benchmarks from the beginning and then tweaking as you go.
Yes, totally agree. And can we dive into some of what those things actually are? So what should a good salesperson actually be doing all day?
Yeah. So it varies from business to business, right? So again, if you are a successful service provider, you probably get a lot of referrals, which is awesome. So you can decide, do you want your salesperson taking those referrals and converting them? Or do you want your salesperson generating new leads from outside of your referrals and converting those? And there's no wrong answer. It's probably a combination of both, if I'm honest. But we have to start there, right? Like, what is their responsibility? What does success look like? So for my sales team personally, and even my entire sales career selling marketing, I always had to generate my own leads. So whether it was through networking, through outreach, through my own referrals, like I worked for very few companies where I was given inbound leads. And if I was, they were few and far between. So the majority of my time was spent cultivating new relationships. So what does that look like? I will tell you what my sales team's days look like day to day. They spend time every day on Facebook and on Instagram. And they have time blocks that are for interacting with new people, right? So they'll identify 10 new leads, right? These 10 people fit the criteria of our ideal client, and they'll start engaging with those people. And then they'll spend an hour in their DMs on both those platforms, continuing the conversations that they were having previously. So they spend a lot of time in conversation. And then my goal is that they're spending, between 2 and 4 hours, because my people work full time, of talk time, meaning in connect calls, in consultation calls, in networking calls. So my goal is that 4 hours of the day are spent in the DMs, building relationships, qualifying, generating new leads. And then the other half of their day is spent actually in conversations, again, through like connection and networking calls or consults. Does it always look that way? No, not at all. But if their calendar isn't full with sales calls, then their time is spent trying to get more sales calls. So that's really, that's it. So we break it down into new people talk to every day, DMs, meaning how many people are we actually actively in conversation with. And then we look for number of connection calls, which are just networking qualifying calls, and the number of consultations. So we don't look at a ton of data points. We look at like 5 or 6, but they're all around that level of activity. Mm-hmm. And again, I have clients who they do a lot of leads or a lot of ads. And so their people don't have to generate leads. So then their time is spent primarily nurturing an existing audience, right? So say for instance, you have, 6,000 Instagram followers, you can hire somebody to just come in and talk to those people and see who in there is qualified to buy your stuff. So it just depends on where you're at in business.
Okay. And then in making those numbers up for the metrics, where do you start if you have, because you're right, a lot of my people do mostly work off referrals. And so they haven't really had to do any of that. Where do they start? Is it the half a day and kind of half a day and like see how much gets done kind of thing?
So I'm always begin with the end in mind, right? So how many sales do you want your salesperson closing? To say you're like, you know what, if they brought me 4 deals a month, a deal a week, 1 new client a week would crush it, right? Like that would absolutely be amazing for us because maybe what you do is really high touch and or high touch and high ticket. So I know if I need 4 sales a month, then I have to figure out, okay, how many sales calls do they need to run to get 4 sales? They're not going to convert at the same level you do. So if you're converting, say 70% of your warm referral sales calls, that's not going to happen when they're dealing with cold traffic, people who don't know you. So maybe we start with the assumption that they're closing 30% of their sales calls, right? So if they're closing 3 out of 10, what do I need to? Then I need 12 sales calls, 12 sales calls to get my 4 sales. So now I know I need 4 sales. I need them running 12 sales calls. And then maybe how many invitations to sales calls does it take for them to get 12 sales calls? So maybe they have to make 24 invitations to sales calls to book 12 calls, because maybe only 1 out of 2 people say yes, right? They make offers to help people and people say, no, I'm good. I'm not interested. I already have somebody, whatever. So, now we know they need to make 24 invitations to sales calls. Cool. So now from there, how many people do we need to talk to get to 24 qualified people? And maybe we determine it's 1 out of every 4 people we talk to are qualified, right? So now I know that I need 100 people to come up with 24 qualified people to make invitations to sales calls, to book 12 sales calls, to get 4 clients, right? So then we start breaking it down after that. Like, okay, how do we get into conversation with 100 people? And that's the made up part, right? That's the part where you're like, add 10 new people to your database every day and interact with 20, and then see what happens to get to 100 people, of which 24 are qualified. So it's working backwards from, what you want to happen, and understand that the numbers and things will change over time. So again, we don't want them at a 30% close rate forever. In fact, our goal is that our people are closing at 40 to 60%. But in the beginning, you have to assume they're new. They're not as experienced as you. They don't have as much information, so that's kind of how we work backwards.
Okay. And then once they're in conversation with people, how do you train inside the Social Sellers Academy to not get really super stuck in chatting? Because that, I feel like, is a major sticking point. How do people, like, they're fine to kind of reach out, they're like happy chatty. How do we move to do you on a sales call?
So we teach a process we call the 6 pillars of qualifying, which are 6 pieces of information that we need to determine, is this person somebody I want to make an invitation to a sales call? So your chatting might be chatting, but you're looking for very specific information in that chat. So it's still focused on the relationship. It's still focused on serving, but there is, there's things we need to know. So simple stuff like, do they have the problem that we solve? Right? If you are a Facebook ads manager, does this person run Facebook ads? Or are they any interest in running Facebook ads? I don't know, right? But we got to find that out before we invite them to a sales call, because it does us no good to invite somebody who's like totally anti-Facebook ads to a sales call, right? In my instance, right, we work with people with sales teams. So there's no reason to invite somebody who doesn't have a sales team to a sales call. So, but I learned that through conversation. It might be like, hey, I see that you have a marketing agency. That's so much fun. What are your favorite types of projects to work on? And then I might ask a question when you tell me what kind of projects. I'd be like, wow, that's really amazing. Is it just you, or do you have a team? Right? But it's just through chit chatting. But my chit chat is giving me the information that I need to know. And then once I know that information, it's a simple transition of, Annalise, I just love getting to know you. I love what you're building with your agency. You're 100% the type of clients that we love to support in Social Sellers Academy. Would you be interested in having a conversation about how we work with our clients? Right? So we are just chatting. It's just, we have to be intentional with the questions that we're asking. So the information we're getting is giving us the information that we need to know as to figure out, is this person my person or not?
Yeah, that's thank you for clarifying. And the way that you articulate that, I think is really clear. And how do you train to move from like, I'm connecting because I saw that you're a member of this group, or like, oh, you have a husky, I have a husky, like whatever that, like whatever the point is, to talking about their business, because I think that is the sticking point for a lot of people, to be like, how do I make this social chat go from like being social to like, now we're talking about business, because that's not why people are there.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, I like to think of it like we're at a networking event. If we were at an in-person networking event, we'd go and, I'd meet you. I'm like, hi, my name's Ryann. Like, hey, I'm Annalise. And I would just, ask a question. What do you do? Or maybe you have on a name tag that says, the name of your marketing company. And I might say, oh, so you have a marketing company. How'd you get into that? Right? So it's like, we're networking, we're talking, or let's use a non-networking event example. Let's say, for instance, you are at a barbecue, right? Actually, no, I'm going to give you a real life example. I was at a kid's birthday party on Sunday, and I had just gotten back from traveling, and someone was like, one of my girlfriends was asking me about traveling. And how's your travels? How did it go? Da, 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 da. And I was just talking and someone's like, where were you? What were you doing? And I told them what I was doing and that it was for work. And oh, what do you do for work? And then I started talking about it. And then I'm asking her about her. And so it's just an idle chit chat over a kid's birthday party about flights being canceled. And now all of a sudden we're having a business conversation, right? So it is about that relationship. So like, oh, we both have littles. How old are your kids? Oh, I see you're running a business and you have kids. How do you manage all that? Right now, we just went from like bonding over our children to having a conversation around kids, right? And again, most of your people listening here today, you guys are service providers. You work with other businesses. So they're there for the same reason you are. So they're not going to be alarmed when you go from husky to business, right? Because they're as obsessed with their business as you are. So I just think it's doing it gracefully and not going from like, oh, we both have huskies to what's your biggest marketing challenge, right? Which is where most people go. Whoa, like what just happened? Versus, oh, you're husky. Like, does your husky always like howl during Zoom calls? Because when COVID first happened, it was, and now all of a sudden we're talking about Zoom calls and now we're talking about business and tell me about your business, right? So it's finding that connection and then gradually getting into that conversation.
Awesome. Thank you. Yes. I think you're right. People just jump into the like, because they're not focusing on the relationship piece. They're focusing on the numbers piece. And the numbers aren't going to work if we don't have the relationship piece.
Absolutely. I mean, I get it, right? Like it can sometimes feel very, all I'm doing is like spending my time in idle chit chat. But another example I will give you, I've networked that's not true. I've not networked my entire career and I got laid off once. And I realized that like, I have no network. Like I had no local network. I worked for companies not local to me. I traveled a lot. And so I was like, that's never going to happen again. And so I started networking and talking to people. And it's just like, you just never know where opportunities come up, right? Like my very first client was introduced to me by somebody that I knew from like a totally different phase of my life. I had a woman that I had a cup of coffee with when I was pregnant with Georgia. Georgia's 2 now. Introduced me to somebody who's interested in the academy like a few months ago, so you just never know where relationships go. But I think we get so tunnel vision, Annalise, on, got to get the sale, that we wind up skipping the relationship building piece and not realizing that every seed that we plant will grow at a different point in time.
So true. Yeah. There's so many examples within my agency of that happening. I've had clients that I chatted to about being on a podcast, and then like, and then I don't know, a year in, I was checking in because I was trying to get them back on the podcast, and they'd had a baby and I sent them a baby gift, and now they were like, and then, then they became a client. So you don't know, like I wasn't sending a baby gift so that they would become a client, but you don't know which seeds will grow. So just keep planting.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk about Social Sellers Academy. So this is the kind of stuff that you train inside the Social Sellers Academy, right? And it's for, I'll let you take it away.
Yeah. The Social Sellers Academy was designed for social sales teams. So we work primarily with sales teams. So this would be for you when your agency hires a social seller and you're like, I don't have the time, energy, or expertise to sell, like to train this person to the point of developing masteries. It's actually like a full 12-month program, and we train live 5 days a week. Like our goal is to replace the arm of like a sales training person in your company, right? Because you don't have time to wear that hat because you're running a company. So our goal is that at the end of 12 months that your salesperson is 10x your investment in them. So if your salary is $40,000 US dollars, we want them producing $400,000 in revenue for the agency within 12 months. That's our goal. That's what we really focus on. But then we do have a lot of resources for our CEOs as well, because many of the business owners that we are blessed to work with, this is their first salesperson, right? So we do what we call CEO check-ins every other week as well. So you make sure you have all the parts and pieces in place in your business so that person can be successful. So the resource is designed for the salesperson, but then obviously for you as the CEO or the leader of your company, you get access to those leadership materials so you can lead that person long-term.
Fantastic. And how do we find out more? Where do people go to read more about that? Because I think that this is something that I'm not seeing anywhere else. I'm not seeing sales being taught like this, and I'm especially not for teams and that focus on ROI. So this is definitely really important. And if you're in a space where you don't want to where you don't know what you're doing, like I was. And full disclosure, I was actually, Kelly Roach was also my business coach. And so in that program, Ryann was one of the trainers. Is that the right word for it? One of the coaches. And so I have seen firsthand for 12 months the power of what Ryann does. So I can totally vouch for everything that you will learn inside this program. And of course, everything that you've heard today. This woman clearly knows what she's talking about. And if you can grow if you can spend 40,000 and get 400,000, like that's what you want to be doing, right? Like you want to put $1 in and get $10 out. That's a good investment. So where do we find out more?
Yeah, so you can visit our website. It's dailysalesondemandforceos.com. We have a podcast by the same name. Pro tip, there's an entire podcast about sales math, which are the numbers Annalise just went through. So if you're like, that went way over my head, I have a whole podcast on it. And then obviously we hang out on social media and all the places. So we're on Instagram at Social Sellers Academy. You can always connect with me personally. My name is Ryann with 2 N's, Dowdy. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Facebook. I'm very easy to find, and I love to network and meet new people. So feel free to connect and reach out.
Thank you so much, Ryann. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Awesome. Thank you, Annalise.
Thank you so much for tuning in to the Impact Business Show. 2 things you should know before you go. First, come and join the party. I'm live with free marketing training in the Social Marketing Method Facebook group every single week. That's where you can ask questions and get the answers you need to simplify your strategy and amplify your income. Go to annalisewarn.com/group to join and come and network with an incredible community of like-minded business owners. Now, second, if you have got any value from this episode, please rate, review, and subscribe, and share it out on your socials. Your support helps us reach more purpose-driven entrepreneurs and increase our impact in the world. Thank you, and I will see you next week. Bye.